Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Walking Dead episode 3 video. Just careful for spoilers if you haven't seen it yet. They definitely toned down the Negan cussing, but he was on a tear this week. Really good origin story for Dwight, although technically, like way back in season 6, it was season 6, episode 6, the first time we saw Sherry, Dwight, and Tina. They referenced that meeting. Remember when we met and we took your stuff? They had escaped with meds, but then Dwight had a change of heart, went back, and Sherry's kind of telling Daryl that it got so much worse. We tried to get away, did not go well for us. This is like a whole bunch of comic book stuff happening here. It's all right out of the comic book. So they're basically trying to make you sympathize with Dwight most of all, but both Dwight and Sherry. But mostly Dwight because he's kind of a mirror for Daryl in this episode. And they both have names that start with D. So every time Negan says, D is my guy, like he's slowly becoming impressed with Daryl, he's becoming a mirror of Dwight. But they just want you to think about Dwight being really pissed off about being under Negan's thumb. So let's do top 10 WTF at Easter eggs. Number 10, Dwight MasterChef Walking Dead edition. They have this Tarantino level montage with this really weird soundtrack that's wildly inappropriate for the situation that they're in. Like he's just making this sandwich like a culinary master, watching two people get in a fight, then rifling through the belongings of one of those guys, kind of implying that one of them died. So okay, well his stuff belongs to us now because he doesn't need it anymore. So you learn a little bit about life inside their compound. Number 9, MasterChef dog food sandwich for Daryl. So thus begins the breaking of Daryl, or attempted breaking of Daryl, but he's a tough guy, he's not going to break right away. So they play that creepy Easy Street song on a loop to make him go crazy, and it reminds you, if you never watched it, Lost, really big TV show where the people in the bunker had to listen to that downtown song over and over again. So it reminded me of that, just because you go nuts listening to any song over and over again. But this is just taking it to a really crazy level. So number 8, Dwight finally gives him a jumpsuit with an A on it, reminding you of Train Car A from Terminus back in season 5. So anytime you see the letter A written on anything, it's just super creepy. But Dwight starts to explain the process to him, like fall in line or you're gonna wind up in the pen being one of these walkers chained up. So number 7, we meet Sherry again. Haven't seen her in a while. We learn a little bit about the dynamic. They start to tease stuff that they explain later in the episode, but Sherry seems like a pretty nice person, tries to talk to Daryl. You can see some of the awkwardness between them, and they don't say it out loud, but it's implied that Sherry has been trying to get pregnant, or maybe trying to not get pregnant with Negan because the test was negative. So I think the doctor's just been giving her pregnancy tests. So maybe that has something to do with her bargain with Negan, like she gives him a child, he'll set her free. But we can speculate about that. But it just continually gets more and more horrifying as you learn more about what's been going on. So number 6, Dwight starts to open up to Daryl. I mean, he's doing Negan's thing, trying to break Daryl, but he's also trying to appeal to the rational human being inside Daryl. Like, look, dude, you're trying to hold out. I thought that I was going to hold out too, but eventually you kneel. It's the right thing to do. Like, he's trying to turn Daryl to the saviors, even though, part of the bargain that Negan made with the survivors when he declared a truce was that they would keep Daryl as insurance, but they didn't say how well they would keep Daryl. So, number 5, WTF, Daryl tries to escape. Sherry's like, dude, don't do it. It gets way worse, but he still tries. Negan stops short of bashing his head in with Lucille, but I think he's just trying to hold up his end of the deal. Like, he knows he needs the survivors' supplies. Like, he needs to keep the supply chain running. In order to do that, he has to uphold his end of the bargain. Like, Negan could kill Daryl, but if he killed Daryl, then the survivors would turn on him and make his life that much harder. Like, as a psychopath, Negan does have a plan, but he does need people to support that plan, so he wants the survivors to give him what he wants, so that's why Daryl's still alive. But they still beat the shit out of him. So he's just upholding the bare minimum terms of the agreement, but he gives them that creepy "who are you" line where everyone's like, we're Negan. We got a taste for that last season when they went up against the saviors for the first time and they're like, where's Negan? And the random saviors like, I'm Negan, and it just doesn't make any sense. Now that makes more sense. Everyone saying they're Negan is their way of saying they've drunk the Kool-Aid, like they're fully on Negan's side. But number 4, Dwight goes on a side mission to bring someone back to the flock, and you get this mirror storyline with Sherry talking to Daryl about how they tried to escape, and however bad you thought it could be, it's much worse. Negan has much, much worse waiting around the corner. And then Dwight also kind of tries to have the same conversation with this other dude who's trying to walk away just like Dwight did, and eventually does what the person asks and shoots him rather than make him go back. And that dovetails nicely with number 3, the conversation that Sherry and Dwight have, where they basically say the opposite of what they really mean. At least all this bullshit we're putting up with is better than being dead, which is totally not true. It's totally better to be dead than be under Negan's thumb. That's why he shot that dude, because he accepted that. So when he's talking to Sherry and says that, he doesn't really mean it. And when Sherry says that Negan is treating her nicely, she's also probably lying. So both Dwight and Sherry are kind of acknowledging that this is almost worse than death, but they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So something's going to have to happen, some big thing to shake them out of their funk. Like, you can see that Dwight is slowly coming to the conclusion that this is not better than being dead, but it's going to take something big to get him to go against Negan. So number 2, this is really messed up. Dwight gives Daryl a Polaroid of Glenn's mashed head. So 1, this is really messed up, but 2, it's kind of a callback for a really offhanded moment when the survivors went to raid the Savior's compound, and there was a wall with a bunch of Polaroids with people with mashed heads. If you remember that, those were all Negan's victims, Lucille victims that they had turned into a Polaroid collage. Just completely messed up. But my number 1 WTF, very clearly, the origin story of the face iron and how Sherry became one of Negan's wives. He's actually done that with a number of women in the comics, but they might just winnow that down a little bit for the TV show. He might only have a couple wives in the TV show. But that all is basically right out of the comics. The big change they made is that Daryl is not in the comics, so there really only been 2 big characters that were ever captured by the Saviors in the comics that have similar arcs to what's happening with Daryl. There was Carl, who snuck into the Savior's compound so that he could kill Negan, and then it kind of goes in a different direction. And then later in the comics, Eugene also got captured by the Saviors. So I guess you could say this is kind of like what happened with Carl. It's a little bit different because Negan really takes a shine to Carl and wants to take him under his wing. He doesn't really think of him as his kid, but he definitely tries to turn Carl, bring out some of the darkness inside of him. So it's a really interesting arc for him. But they've changed that for the TV show. He's trying to do the same thing with Daryl now, but we'll see how far that gets before shit goes crazy at the Savior's compound. Let me know though, what was your favorite moment from the episode? Was it the origin story of Face Iron, Dwight, and Sherry? Or was it just the creepy Daryl montage of them trying to break him, like an episode of Lost? The crazy thing about Dwight, I was asking people on Twitter, during the episode, they're really trying to make you sympathize with Dwight and Sherry, but a bunch of you guys were like, hell no, he is way too bad. But do you think that by the end of this season, they will have done this really crazy Dwight arc where you do sympathize with him? Because he has done some really bad shit, so it's really hard to forgive him for all that stuff. But it sounds like things are going to get even worse for him, so they really, really want you to think that he's not an evil person compared to Negan. He has that crazy pussy bar line where he's like, hey, you want some free tail? And Dwight's just like, no thanks. When he says blast from the past, that happened before they explained the Sherry stuff, but it's kind of heavily implied that Dwight is not allowed to have sex with Sherry anymore, even though he's still in love with her. But it's totally messed up in the best possible way. I love the way they did that opening montage too. That was so good. It just shows you how crazy it is, but how some of the Saviors totally think that it's normal. Dwight looks like he's slowly coming to his senses, but some of the others look like they're totally eating it up. But they wanted to show you in this episode that not everybody that's living there with Negan is just like Negan. So I will say, new round of the Walking Dead giveaway starts now. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this video. So I'll do a trailer video tomorrow. I'm also posting Doctor Strange Easter eggs. Let me know if there are any comic book bonus videos that you guys want me to do later this week too, just because now we are doing a lot of comic book Negan stuff. But get hype, I felt like this episode was a lot better than last week's episode. Just really picked up the crazy slack. Every once in a while you do need an episode where they take their foot off the gas and you just chill for a little bit, but I just love it when it gets super, super crazy, and that's what Negan is all about this year. While you guys wait for my next video to post, you can click here for all my Walking Dead videos, and you can click here to learn how Dr. Doom is the new Iron Man in the Marvel Universe. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.